when you implement this, and there's a check-off process by which you say, you know, we did pre-construction surveys for this particular species or that particular species. So
And
there's,
go ahead.
so there's that's the process or the purpose of the MMRP.
Okay, and then my understanding is actually once the project is underway, those mitigation measures will be monitored going forward.
That's correct, and part of those mitigation measures are actually monitoring. So for this particular project, where we have impacts to some sensitive plant species, one of the mitigations is to develop a rare plant mitigation and monitoring plan. So that is essentially, you know, replanting some of those natives, those sensitive species to a different location, and then monitoring their populations for the next 5 years.
Right.
So we're not just removing the plants, planting them, and walking away. There's an
You're actually
investment
going to be
in time.
tracking and monitoring. Then the other persistent correspondence I've gotten is on cultural resources. I know the local tribe representative has been consulted on this.
That's correct, yep.
And I understand there's also some historic resources in that area because of the old farmstead that
They are, but they're all underneath the lake, yeah, for the most part. There's, I think, one item that was near Liberty Gulch, but it was determined to not be a significantly historical.
What is that? You said one item?
It was a foundation, and I believe an electrical pole, an old electrical pole, not functioning.
Okay.
And that's actually, we can give a copy to you if you can see that, but it's technically a cultural resources report, so it's protected.
Okay. Okay, well, if nobody else has any questions or comments, why don't we open it up for public comment? Oh,
public hearing.
Oh, we're going to open up a public hearing, formal public hearing. And I've got some cards. I'm just going to call them in the order that I received them. And the first is Bill Abright.
Hi. I have been a mountain biker for 3.5 decades now, and I have always accessed the Pine Mountain Fire Road Loop by going up Fairfax Bolinas Road. And I've always been a little bit afraid, especially when it's early in the morning or pre-dawn hours, about getting hit by cars, and I'm absolutely delighted, and I want to applaud you for taking on the Azalea Hill project, the extent of your study, and I urge you to approve this plan for the reasons I've just stated. It'll take a lot of people off the road, which is twisty and windy and unsafe, and put us on the watershed lands where we really intend to be. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Bill. Next is Eva Buxton.
Yes, I'm Eva Buxton. I'm a botanist and the conservation chair for the Marin chapter of the California Native Plant Society. Serpentine outcrops are found in Mount Tam in several places, Azalea Hill being one of them. Serpentine soils, especially gravelly soils, support many species restricted to such soils, as is the case on Azalea Hill. Many of these species are rare and endangered. Some are listed under the Endangered Species Act. As a botanist, I'm always aware of the plant species when visiting an area. I know that a great portion of the Azalea Hill is dominated by non-native European grasses. Therefore, the district's statement in Master Response 8 to the latest MND, that over the last 10 years, numerous alternative routes were considered, evaluated, and refined to produce the least impactful project that can achieve project goals. That statement does not ring quite true to me. Two of the goals are restore habitat, including sensitive serpentine habitats, by decommissioning non-system and superfluous roads and trails. This goal would include the Liberty Gulch Road. Another goal is to provide routes, or routes, I don't know how you pronounce it, that avoid environmentally sensitive areas wherever possible. The LGR corridor, the Liberty Gulch corridor, is the most sensitive area on Azalea Hill in addition to the mid-slope rocky outcrop on the northeast side of the hill. Speaking as a botanist with environmental consulting experience, attaining the goals outlined in the RTMP and the MND amendment is not possible if the LGR corridor is developed. I urge the board to vote to abandon the LGR portion of the project, and if not, to consider what the initial study clearly showed, that the project would have one or more, and this is expressed in CEQA guidelines, one or more significant effects. The destruction of rare plants and their habitat are two of those, and this cannot be mitigated below the level of significance. The construction and future use of a 4-foot wide multi-use road in a pristine serpentine community will cause impacts that cannot be mitigated by any environmental protection measures or adaptive management actions, including best management practices. Therefore, an EIR for this project must be prepared. Avoidance is the right mitigation measure. And the CMPS believes that improving the existing Azalea Road Hill Trail or developing a social trail should be the environmentally preferred alternative. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Excuse me, next is Ted Failhaber.
Hi, thank you. I'm a coach with the Drake mountain biking team, and on behalf of our 75 team riders, some are here tonight. We want to support this plan for the safety reasons, so we're not on Fairfax-Bolinas Road, and for the erosion control and the improvement to the environment and additional hiking and recreation benefits to the area. And besides Drake, we have San Domenico here, and Tam and Redwood and San Rafael all use the area, and I think it would be a great benefit to our youth. Thank you for all the hard work you guys have put in on this.
Thanks very much. Next is Nona Dennis.
Sorry, not sturdy these days. Thank you very much for having this hearing. This is a project which we have been tracking for 10 years. We know the dilemma that you have faced in trying to find some way to connect the Bullfrog area with the lakes area. And it was after searching, actually doing field trips, that you came up with the Liberty Gulch route. And along with that, the decommissioning of the trail, all the social trails up on Azalea Hill, and so forth. So we've had very mixed feelings about it. We've weighed back and forth. We absolutely recognize the concerns that the Native Plant Society has. We have the same concerns. But finally, we have decided that in balance, we can support the project. However, I do have some comments to make about the last documentation. This is the third round now for a mitigated deck. You've made some great improvements, but now the rubber meets the road, and that's the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. That's what you really adopt. That's what you're really going to do. And so that's what I've really focused my attention on, because I've written these things in the past. I'm aware of the importance of what goes into them. You have in the matrix, first of all, the mitigation measures, which are in summary, the specific action. That's what you're really going to do, your staff is going to do. Ordinarily, there's a column that asks who is responsible, because in many EIRs, there are multiple agencies and entities, public works or what have you. Since there's no column here, I'm going to assume, and I assume safely, that that is entirely staff that's going to carry this out, although with some help of some consultants. Then there's a timing column. And unfortunately, all this document does is to give 4 time frames: design, pre-construction, construction, and post-construction. It gives us no idea, first of all, as to how long the construction phase is going to be. And then for some critical elements in the mitigation program, the first is the rare plant survey, the second one is revegetation, a third one is monitoring for invasive species, a fourth one is really monitoring for behaviors in using this trail, And then the fifth one is really sort of getting it all together and reporting to you and to the public. And we find that there is really there's some mixed messages here. First of all, the rear plan itself is shown as a construction phase activity, when in fact it stretches out for 5 years. We'd like to see in the plan a portion of that plan called out, which calls for monitoring and defines it as a specific action with a 5-year time frame or until the criteria are met. We see that a botanist will, at one point, will monitor invasive plants quarterly. We see in another place the botanist will monitor degradation annually. We see another one as needed. We'd like some clarity as to when the botanist and the consultants are going to actually monitor how the trail is performing as to invasive weeds, which is probably the worst possible threat that can happen in any trail. So that we want some consistency. We really want it to be quarterly. We also find the revegetation plan needs to be spelled out as a 5-year plan under specific actions. And finally, at the end, we see that there is that the staff will report after 5 years on behavior of this, how the plan is, how the project is actually working. That's absolutely unsupportable. There must be, in our view, since you're taking on a trail which does have potential significant impacts, everything is going to rely on how it's mitigated and how it's designed and carried out and how you follow how it's working, really. So to wait for 5 years is really untenable. We need to hear, at least on an annual basis, whether this, which is an experiment, in this district it's an experiment to turn a road into a non-trail. It's called a road, we know it's a trail. So we need to know on an annual basis how it's working, how you're monitoring, how the rangers are handling it, how the botanist is handling it, you're a marvelous botanist, how it's working. So please come back to the public, to the board, on at least an annual basis. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay. The next card I have is Julia Bueller.
That was a joke. Damn, you guys. My name is Julia Bielich, and I am born and raised in Marin County. My mother was very involved with the environmental movement back when I was a child in the 70s. I am a local business person, and I'm also on the board of the Marin County Bicycle Coalition and also a high school coach for mountain biking. I'm also a runner and, as of right now, a very avid hiker since I just had spine surgery. I remember in 2011 when I sat down with Mike Swayze for the first time to discuss the idea of a multi-use path in the Azalea Hill area primarily for safety. And I had always been very grateful and appreciative of the MMWD's protection of our watershed. There is no recreation in the title of the Marin Municipal Water District. So when I mentioned to him, I thought that he would not embrace it at all.